He's a seasoned sales leader who prefers a Radler with his curry and has a strong passion for demystifying sales and helping sales reps achieve their full potential. I'm delighted to welcome and have a conversation with Tibor Shanto, principal at Renbor Sales Solutions and head of the Proactive Prospecting Club on Smalltalk. I'm your host, Javed Khan. Tibor Shanto, welcome to Smalltalk.
Great to be here, Javed.
Hey, Tibor, I'm very excited for this conversation. And so, folks, Tibor is the principal of a company called the Renbor Sales Solutions. But it's really cool, too, because you've got a club. It's called the Proactive Prospecting Club. I think that's what you've started. And that is a fascinating little club that he's starting off that you can look up online. But today, Tibor, I wanted to talk about, and this is a fascinating conversation, folks, because many salespeople are, in some cases, confused, or they're trying to figure out how to embrace this whole online and the whole technology, internet thing. And the conversation today, Tibor, I'd love for you to share is, is that impacting sales people? Is it impacting sales techniques? Is it impacting the buyers and sellers of what salespeople are interacting with? Fascinating conversation, Tibor, and I want to hear from you what your thoughts are in terms of the online with how it impacts the sales relationships.
So yeah, I mean, I think there's been tremendous change, but I think sometimes we can be drawn to false conclusions, or we can be drawn down certain alleys that maybe change our perception. So I've been selling professionally. I don't know if I want to admit it, but well over 35 years, so I've seen a lot of change. And I think anybody over 35 years is going to see change. But there are some things that have changed tremendously, which I think have gotten a lot of the attention, a lot of the news. But I think there's some things that haven't, that people are now ignoring because there's so much attention being paid to the other side. So let me start by saying I tend to look at sales as being sort of three concentric circles. And the outside circles, where the tools are primarily for salespeople, but since the advent of the internet, which has really only been about 20 years, we think it's been around forever. And certainly my kids, for them, it's been around forever. But it's only been about 20 years. And since the advent of the internet, there's been a lot of good tools. And let's be clear about it. Whatever I say about technology doesn't negate the value that it's brought to a salesperson's life, to a sales organization's life, and there's been a lot of change. And certainly, again, as with anything, that pace of change grows the more we're into it. So if you look at simply from the time of the last recession, when the Lehman Brothers took us for a party, and you look at the tools and the advancements in those tools and the growth of things like salesforce.com, for instance, have been tremendous. So if you looked at it from that perspective, if you were an observer and looked at sales for how people are selling and the tools that they're using and how they're interacting, simple thing, look at you and I, we're right now on Zoom. A lot of business is taking place in virtual exchanges like this. So there's been tremendous change. There's no doubt about it, certainly on the sales side, certainly on the buying side. If you go to the second circle, it's how people are using the tools. So initially when the internet came about, there was a lot of talk about a disruption. People love that word, disruption. We used to call it change, now it's disruption. So there was a lot of disruption around this notion of what the value of the salesperson was. And at the beginning, there was this reality that now buyers had direct access to information. So in fact, they didn't necessarily need to talk to a salesperson like me to understand the difference between one brand of copier versus another brand of copier. They can now go to the internet, get reviews from professional people, unbiased people, biased people, all kinds of people on the internet, right? And some of them actually know what they're talking about. So, there was a lot of information. And yes, there was a bit of a liberation, shall we say, of the buyer. I remember buying my car and going to the internet and completely ignoring the dealer and just negotiating and going to pick up my car somewhere without the pleasure of dealing with the car dealer. So, so it gave a lot of tools to the buyers to avoid some of the things that the sellers were throwing at them. Then there were new tools developed for the sellers to be able to approach buyers in a certain way. And what you got is a lot of output from the outer circle because you have a lot of tools, a lot of data, a lot of this, a lot of content marketing. You breathe near a website and you start getting a stream of emails. So, there were a lot of those things. And you can understand why the buyers wanted to hide from all this. And for a while that worked, but then all of a sudden what the buyers began to realize is that with this fire hose of information coming at them, they weren't really able to make sense of it. And there's a number of credible organizations, who have shown that buyers are now more confused. They're overwhelmed by their choice. And in fact, buying decisions in B2B have almost doubled, and in some instances have gone much longer because even buyers themselves are surprised how long it's taking them to make a decision. If 5 years ago they bought a cutting machine and it might have taken them 6 months to evaluate, test this, that, and the other, they're finding now it's taking 9, 10, 12 months. And salespeople need to be aware of that because that's going to impact their performance. So you've got this balance now. So you've got a lot of stuff in the outer circle. You've got a lot of things that help both players, protect their time and energy in the second circle. But what hasn't changed, and you can take this right back to Adam and Eve, from the time the serpent sold that first apple to Eve, what hasn't changed is the reason that people buy. The why has not changed, right? Why a buyer goes to market hasn't changed. Why a buyer doesn't go to market has not changed. And I think that's the part that salespeople have ignored, I would say, in favor of technologies. So it's not that technology is bad, but I think salespeople, business people need to find a blend of tools that work as opposed to always going for the latest fashion. Because if you do that, you're going to be making a lot of noise without knowing why you're making that noise.
So Tibor, for those folks who are watching this segment, what would be that one action item? What would that one thing you would like them to do, either by hitting the pause button or watching the entire segment and then going and doing something? What's that one thing you'd like them to do from for these salespeople?
I think I'd like them to put a greater focus on why it is that buyers are buying, which seems like a natural, but there are some steps that they could take. And one thing is to go back and actually review why it is that you lost or won, or why some clients go to no decision. I don't know what it's like in your business, but in most B2B scenarios, about 25 to 35% of deals that go into the top of the funnel just go to no decision. It's not like you win or lose, the buyer just backed off. So if you can understand why that is, what motivated them to take the action. So not what they responded to. And if, in your A/B testing, is A getting you more attention or is B getting you more attention? Yeah, that's important. But when it comes down to the moment of deciding the purchase, it's a good thing to know why it is exactly that they bought. And it's also a good thing to know why they didn't buy. And again, studies have shown that salespeople are not aware of why they lose. When they win, they take it for granted. It was them, their smile, their beautiful haircut, that's why they won the deal. But when they lose, talk to most salespeople and they go, oh, it was price or it was product. 9 times out of 10, it wasn't that at all. They didn't understand why that buyer was going to market and what they were trying to achieve as a result and what outcomes they were looking for by virtue of making that purchase. So the one thing I would do is get into the habit of reviewing all the opportunities that go into the top of your pipeline. There's several tools out there, but really it's a mindset. It's not a tool thing. You can do it with a piece of paper and a crayon. It's a mindset. Understand why you win and why you lose. Again, change why you lose, repeat why you win.
So folks, Tibor Shanto, Renbor Sales Solutions. You also, if you are very interested in continuing the conversation with Tibor, please look him up online. His information has been scrolling through. Also, look up this new club he's got. It's called, what is it,
Proactive Prospecting Club.
Proactive Prospecting Club. Check that club out. He's starting that up. It's ramping up. There's an opportunity for you to learn certainly a lot more there. Now, last question before we say a fair adieu. What would be and who would be that one, if you had that one individual, living or past, that you could have a small talk show with? Real quick, who would that be and why?
It would be Ian Anderson, because I want to know what he did to Martin Barr.
Okay. I mean, Ian Anderson, I'm going to look that person up. Interesting. So
what he did to Martin Barr.
What you did to Martin Barr. Folks, Tibor Shanto, Renbor Sales Solutions, Proactive Prospecting Club. Check them out. Please connect in with Tibor. The whole idea here is to start the conversation and then continue it with Tibor whenever you can and ask him whatever questions you want. Tibor, thank you so much for coming here on to Small Talk.
It was fun. Thank you.
Thank you to Tibor Shanto of Renbor Sales Solutions and the Proactive Prospecting Club for joining me on Smalltalk. You can also listen to the show as part of our podcast series. Now it's your turn. Please comment, subscribe, and share. If you've got a topic you'd like to discuss on the show, please give me a call or send me an email. We'll talk with you next time.